I sat in the corner of the grand ballroom, my hands trembling slightly as I adjusted the simple pearl necklace around my neck. The wedding reception of my only granddaughter, Lily, was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting a warm glow over the sea of unfamiliar faces. I couldn't help but feel out of place among the designer dresses and tailored suits. My navy blue dress, the nicest one I owned, suddenly felt inadequate. "Who's that woman sitting alone?" I heard someone whisper from a nearby table. "Oh, that's Patricia Morrison, Lily's grandmother," another voice replied, not bothering to lower her tone. "The absent grandma, as everyone calls her." The absent grandma. Those 3 words sliced through me like a knife. I kept my expression neutral, years of practice hiding my pain behind a mask of composure. But inside, my heart was shattering all over again. If only they knew what those words meant to me. If only they knew what I had sacrificed for the beautiful bride dancing across the room in her $1,000 gown, blissfully unaware of my presence. I watched as Lily twirled in her husband's arms, her face radiant with joy. She looked so much like my son David, the same honey blonde hair, the same dimple when she smiled. David had been gone for 15 years now, a car accident that took him and nearly destroyed me. His wife, Vanessa, had been left with 8-year-old Lily, and I had promised myself I would be there for them both, no matter what. But Vanessa had other ideas. "Mrs. Morrison?" A server approached with a glass of champagne. "Would you like a drink?" "No, thank you," I said quietly. Alcohol wouldn't dull this particular pain. My eyes drifted back to Lily. She was 23 now, a newly minted doctor with a promising career ahead of her. A doctor because of me, though she didn't know the full extent of it. A doctor because I had sold my home of 40 years, the one with David's height marks still penciled on the kitchen wall. A doctor because I had emptied my retirement accounts and worked night shifts at the grocery store well past when my arthritis made standing for hours pure agony. A doctor because I had made a promise. She barely knows her grandmother. Another voice drifted over from somewhere behind me. I heard Patricia never bothered to visit, too busy with her own life, I guess. I closed my eyes briefly, willing away the tears that threatened to spill. The irony was almost too much to bear. Too busy with my own life? My life had been nothing but working 3 jobs to make sure Lily's medical school tuition was paid on time. My life had been deliberately staying away because Vanessa had made it painfully clear that my presence complicated things with her new husband. "Grandma Pat?" I looked up, startled to see Lily standing in front of me, gorgeous in her wedding gown. She rarely called me Grandma anymore. "Lily," I said, my voice betraying nothing of the storm inside me. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." She shifted uncomfortably, glancing over her shoulder where Vanessa stood watching us, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I just wanted to thank you for coming," Lily said formally, as if thanking a distant acquaintance. "And for the gift." The gift, a modest check that had strained my budget for months. Nothing compared to what I had already given her, of course. Nothing compared to the sacrifice she would never know about. "I wouldn't have missed it," I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. Lily nodded, already drifting away, pulled, back toward her mother's orbit. As she moved away, I heard Vanessa's perfectly manicured whisper, "Don't worry about her. She was never there when it mattered anyway." I gripped the edge of the tablecloth, my knuckles turning white. Never there, when it mattered. I had been there in the only way Vanessa would allow, silently funding Lily's dreams from the shadows, keeping my promise to my son that his daughter would have every opportunity. The only condition had been my silence, the promise I'd made to Vanessa years ago. Lily would never know where the money really came from. She would believe it was scholarships, grants, Vanessa's new husband's generosity, anything but the truth. As I watched my granddaughter return to her celebration, laughing with people who knew nothing about me, I wondered if keeping that promise had been worth the price. The absent grandma. If only they knew. The morning after Lily's wedding, I woke up in my small apartment with swollen eyes and an ache in my chest that no pain medication could touch. The clock read 5:30 a.m. Old habits die hard when you've spent years working early morning shifts. I shuffled to the kitchen, my slippers sliding across the worn linoleum floor as I prepared my single cup of coffee. 15 years. 15 years of sacrifice, of distance, of being labeled absent when I had given everything. It started after David's funeral. I can still see Vanessa standing in my living room, her black dress immaculate, her composure perfect despite having buried her husband just hours before. "Patricia," she had said, voice steady, "I need to discuss Lily's future." I had nodded, assuming we would talk about how I could help with my granddaughter. Instead, what followed was a carefully crafted dismantling of my role in Lily's life. "My parents want us to move closer to them in Connecticut," she announced. "They have connections. Social standing. Lily will have opportunities there. But this is her home." I'd protested weakly. "Her friends are here, her school. I'm here." Vanessa's expression had hardened then. "David is gone, Patricia. I need to think about what's best for Lily now." What was best for Lily, apparently, was distance from me. Distance from the middle-class neighborhood where her father had grown up, from the grandmother who couldn't offer social connections or country club memberships. The coffee machine beeped, pulling me back to the present. I poured the steaming liquid into my mug, a Mother's Day gift from David 20 years ago, and settled at my small kitchen table. Photos covered the refrigerator door, Lily's school pictures, sent reluctantly by Vanessa each year. Graduation. Photos I'd received in the mail, always after the ceremonies I wasn't invited to attend. I'd framed them anyway, treasuring these glimpses into a life I funded but couldn't participate in. I remember the day Lily called me, excited and breathless, to tell me she'd been accepted to medical school. I'd pretended to be surprised, even though I'd already received the tuition bill, the first of many that would drain my savings and force me back into the workforce at 62. "That's wonderful news, sweetheart," I'd said, genuine pride mixing with the pain of pretense. "Mom says it's because of all her networking," Lily had replied, "and Gary's connections at the alumni office." Gary, Vanessa's second husband, the successful businessman who had stepped into my son's shoes and taken credit for the opportunities I had provided. I had met him exactly twice, both times enduring. His condescending smiles as he called me Mom, a title I had never granted him permission to use. I sipped my coffee, grimacing at the bitterness. Like the morning after David's funeral, when Vanessa had laid out her terms in precise, unemotional sentences. "Lily will need financial support for college eventually," she had said. "David's life insurance won't cover everything, especially with the kind of schools we're considering." "I'll help in any way I can," I'd promised immediately. "There are conditions," Vanessa had replied, her voice cooling several degrees. "I don't want Lily feeling obligated to you. I don't want her life complicated by divided loyalties." I remember how my hands had trembled as I realized what she was asking. "You want me to help financially but stay away?" "I want what's best for Lily," Vanessa had insisted. "She needs to focus on her future, not be burdened by the past." David would want her to move forward, using my dead son against me. That had been the final twist of the knife. I had agreed to her terms, believing that some presence in Lily's life, even a distant one, was better than none. I had thought the arrangement would be temporary, that eventually Vanessa would soften. Instead, over the years, the distance had only grown. The monthly phone calls dwindled to occasional text messages. The holiday visits became brief, uncomfortable meetings in restaurants rather than homes. Each time, Vanessa would remind Lily of some imagined slight. Remember when Grandma missed your piano recital? Or Grandma was too busy to come to your graduation? Never mentioning that I wasn't invited to the recital. Never explaining that I was working a double shift to pay for the graduation gift. I had become the convenient villain in their narrative. The grandmother who didn't care enough, who was too wrapped up in her own life to be present. Meanwhile, I worked at the grocery store during the day, delivered food in the evenings, and took in mending on weekends, all to keep the money flowing toward Connecticut, toward the future my son would have wanted for his daughter. I shuffled to the refrigerator and touched a photo of Lily in her white lab coat, taken when she started her clinical rotations. My beautiful granddaughter, the doctor. Worth every sacrifice, every aching joint, every missed holiday, every night spent alone. But as I looked at yesterday's wedding invitation tucked beneath the magnet, an invitation that had arrived at the last minute, almost as an afterthought, I wondered if Lily would ever know the truth. The absent grandma, they had called me. If only they knew the cost of my absence. 2 days after the wedding, I was sorting through my weekly pills when my phone rang. Lily's name flashed on the screen. My heart jumped. She rarely called. I answered immediately, nearly knocking over my pill organizer in my haste. "Lily, is everything all right?" "Hi, Grandma Pat." Her voice sounded strained. "Are you busy right now?" "Never too busy for you," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I was wondering if we could meet for coffee. I'm still in town before we leave for our honeymoon tomorrow." 30. Minutes later, I sat in an upscale coffee shop near Lily's hotel, nervously smoothing down my shirt. When she walked in, heads turned. My granddaughter had her father's height and her mother's polished elegance, dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Grandma," she said, bending to kiss my cheek before sitting down across from me. "This is a nice surprise," I said, meaning it. "I thought you'd be busy with wedding gifts and thank you notes." Lily fidgeted with her massive diamond ring, twisting it around her finger. "Blake's family has a service for that." Of course they did. Blake Harrington III came from old money, the kind that had services for everything. "I wanted to talk to you," she continued, not meeting my eyes, "about something Mom said after you left the reception." My stomach tightened. "Oh?" "She mentioned that you were upset about your seating arrangement, that you expected to be at the family table." Lily finally looked up, her expression a mixture of guilt and defensiveness. "I just wanted to explain that Blake's family has very particular ideas about these things, and with his grandmother being so traditional—" "Lily," I interrupted gently, "I wasn't upset about where I sat." She blinked. "You weren't?" "No. I was just happy to be there. But Mom said—" She stopped, suddenly uncertain. I reached for my coffee, buying time to choose my words carefully. "I think your mother may have misunderstood. I would never want to complicate your special day with seating concerns." Lily studied me for a moment. "Then why did you leave right after the cake cutting?" "Because Vanessa had pointedly told the server not to bring me a slice. Because I'd overheard Blake's mother asking who that woman in the outdated dress was. Because it hurt too much to watch you celebrate with people who knew nothing about the sacrifices that had gotten you there." "I was tired," I said instead. "These old bones don't do well with late nights anymore." Lily nodded, but didn't seem entirely convinced. She took a sip of her elaborate latte before asking, "Can I ask you something else, Grandma?" "Anything. Why weren't you around more when I was growing up?" The question I had been dreading for 15 years hung in the air between us. I gripped my mug tighter, feeling the heat burn my palms. "What did your mother tell you?" I asked carefully. Lily shrugged. "That you had your own life. That after Dad died, you needed space from anything that reminded you of him. That you loved me but couldn't handle being too involved." Each word was a knife twisting deeper. The carefully constructed narrative Vanessa had built over the years. painting me as a grandmother who chose distance over involvement. I see, I said softly. Was it true? Lily pressed. Did it hurt too much to be around me because I remind you of Dad? I looked at my beautiful granddaughter, her eyes, so like David's, searching my face for answers. What could I say? That her mother had systematically pushed me out of her life? That I had been paying her tuition while working jobs that left me too exhausted to stand? That our entire relationship had been built on a bargain that required my silence? Life after your father died was complicated, I finally said. There were many factors that influenced how often we saw each other. Like what? There was a hint of challenge in her voice now. I took a deep breath. Lily, do you remember who paid for your medical school? She looked surprised by the change of subject. Mom and Gary mostly, and I had some scholarships. Why? Before I could respond, Lily's phone buzzed. She glanced down. It's Blake. He's wondering where I am. We have dinner with his parents in an hour. The moment was slipping away. Part of thaw. Me wanted to grab her hands and tell her everything. About the house I'd sold, the retirement I'd sacrificed, the nights I'd spent working while my arthritis flared. About how her mother had made me promise never to tell her where the money really came from. But looking at her now, successful, married into a wealthy family, with her perfect life stretching before her, what good would the truth do? It would only burden her with guilt and potentially damage her relationship with her mother. It's nothing, I said, forcing a smile. You should go. Don't keep Blake waiting. Lily hesitated. Are you sure? You seemed like you wanted to say something important. Just that I'm proud of you, I said, the truth hiding in plain sight, and that I've always loved you, even when I couldn't be there. She smiled, relieved. Thanks, Grandma. She stood, gathering her designer purse. I'll call you when we get back from Bora Bora. I nodded, knowing she probably wouldn't. As I watched her walk away, I wondered if I had just missed my only chance to break the silent agreement that had defined our relationship for 15 years. But some sacrifices once made become impossible to unmake. Some silences once agreed to become too loud to break. 3 months after Lily's wedding, I was folding laundry when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Vanessa's number. In 15 years, she had called me exactly 12 times, always when she needed money. Hello? I answered, already mentally calculating how much I could spare from my dwindling savings. Patricia. Vanessa's voice was tight, controlled. Lily's in the hospital. My heart stopped. What happened? Is she all right? She collapsed at work. They think it's her appendix. She's going into surgery soon. I was already reaching for my purse. Which hospital? Massachusetts General. But, Patricia? Vanessa's voice hardened. There's no need for you to come all this way. I just thought, you should know. Of course she didn't want me there. But this wasn't about her. I'm coming, Vanessa. She's my granddaughter. She has Blake and his family. She has me. She doesn't need— I'll be there tonight, I interrupted, something I rarely dared to do with Vanessa. Then I hung up before she could protest further. 6 hours later, after draining my emergency credit card for a last-minute flight, I walked into Massachusetts General Hospital. At the reception desk, I asked for Lily Harrington's room. Family only, the receptionist said, eyeing my rumpled clothes. I'm her grandmother. The words felt both true and false on my tongue. True by blood, false by circumstance. Patricia? A deep voice called from behind me. I turned to see Blake, Lily's husband, walking toward me. He looked tired but composed in his expensive suit. Blake, I said, extending my hand. I came as soon as I heard. How is she? She's out of surgery. It was her appendix, but they caught it before it ruptured. He actually sounded relieved to see me, which was unexpected. She's resting now. Come on, I'll take you to her room. As we walked, he explained that Vanessa had gone to get coffee, and that Blake's parents were on their way from Connecticut. "We were lucky I was home when she collapsed," he said. "I've been traveling so much for work lately." He led me to a private room where Lily lay sleeping, her face pale against the white pillows. My heart clenched at how vulnerable she looked. So much like when she was a little girl before everything changed. "The doctor said she'll need to stay overnight for observation, but she should recover quickly," Blake said, checking his vibrating phone. "Excuse me, I need to take this." "It's the office." Left alone with Lily, I gently took her hand. "I'm here, sweetheart," I whispered, though I knew she couldn't hear me. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa's cold voice cut through the room. She stood in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, her expression a mixture of surprise and annoyance. "I told you I was coming," I said calmly, not letting go of Lily's hand. "And I told you it wasn't necessary." She stepped into the room, setting her coffee down with deliberate precision. "Blake's parents will be here soon. They've arranged for a private nurse once she's released." "I'm not here to interfere with their plans," I said. "I just wanted to see her." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "After all these years of minimal contact, you suddenly need to rush to her side? A bit theatrical, don't you think?" The unfairness of her words stung. "She's my only grandchild, Vanessa, my son's daughter." "Yes, you've always been quick to claim that connection when it suits you," she said dismissively. "But where were you when she needed—" "Don't." My voice was sharper than I intended. "Don't rewrite history, Vanessa. Not today." A soft moan from the bed interrupted our brewing argument. Lily's eyes fluttered open. "Mom?" Then her gaze shifted to me. "Grandma? Pat? What are you doing here?" "I came to see you, sweetheart," I said, squeezing her hand gently. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone cut me open?" She attempted a weak joke. "But they said it went well. No complications." Vanessa moved to the other side of the bed, subtly, edging me away. "Blake's parents are bringing in Dr. Peterson from New York to consult. He's the best in the field." Lily nodded, then turned back to me with genuine curiosity. "How did you know I was here? And how did you get here so fast?" "Your mother called me," I explained. "And I got on the first flight I could find." "You flew all the way from Arizona?" Lily seemed surprised. "But that must have cost—" "It doesn't matter," I interrupted gently. "What matters is that you're okay." The door opened again as Blake returned, followed by an older nurse who needed to check Lily's vitals. I stepped back, moving toward a small table where Lily's personal belongings had been placed in a hospital bag. As the nurse asked Lily questions, I noticed a folder peeking out from the bag. Medical forms, most likely. But something caught my eye, a University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine letterhead. Without thinking, I pulled it slightly out, revealing a financial document dated 5 years ago. It was a tuition receipt, with my name clearly listed as the payee. My heart hammered in my chest. Why did Lily have this? She wasn't supposed to know I had paid for her education. That was the agreement. "What are you looking at?" Vanessa had noticed my distraction. Before I could answer, Blake glanced over. "Oh, those are the papers Lily was organizing before she collapsed. Her medical school records. She's applying for that research position and needed her transcript." I tried to slide the document back into the folder, but Vanessa was faster. She snatched it from my hand, her eyes widening as she read it. "Grandma?" Lily's voice was confused. "Why does that receipt have your name on it?" The room fell silent. The nurse, sensing the sudden tension, murmured something about coming back later and slipped out. "It's just a mix-up," Vanessa said quickly. "The university must have made a clerical error for $43,000? Blake asked, his businessman's mind picking up on the substantial amount. "That's quite an error." I looked at Lily's pale face, at the question forming in her eyes. After 15 years of silence, the truth was finally emerging. Not through my confession, but through a simple piece of paper that had never been meant for her to see. Grandma, Lily said slowly, did you pay for my medical school? 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me, waiting. The silent agreement that had shaped our lives for 15 years hung in the balance. Whatever I said next would change everything. Grandma, did you pay for my medical school? Lily's question hung in the air. I felt Vanessa's eyes burning into me, silently demanding that I keep our agreement. But the paper in her hand made denial impossible. Yes, I said simply, my voice steadier than I expected. I did. Lily's face registered confusion, then shock. But I thought Mom and Gary. Your mother and I had an arrangement, I explained carefully. I provided the money, but it was to appear as if it came from them. An arrangement? Blake asked, his brow furrowed. What kind of arrangement? Vanessa's voice cut through the room, sharp and defensive. This isn't the time, Patricia. Lily is recovering from surgery. I want to know, Lily insisted, her voice stronger now. Grandma, please. What arrangement? I took a deep breath and moved back to Lily's side. After your father died, your mother made it clear that she wanted to build a new life for you both. A life that, unfortunately, didn't include much of me. That's not true, Vanessa interjected. You were always welcome to visit. I turned to her with 15 years of pent-up frustration. When, Vanessa? When you moved Lily across the country? When you scheduled her activities during every holiday I tried to visit? When you told her I didn't show up to events I was never invited to? Lily's eyes widened. What? I never excluded you, Vanessa insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Not explicitly, I acknowledged. But you made it clear that my role was to provide financial support, not to be an active grandmother. That was our arrangement. Is this true, Mom? Lily looked at Vanessa, who suddenly seemed unable to meet her daughter's gaze. The silence was answer enough. How much? Blake asked quietly. At first, I wasn't sure what he meant. How much did you contribute to Lily's education? I hesitated. It doesn't matter. It matters to me, Lily insisted. Please, Grandma, I need to know. I looked at my granddaughter, realizing she deserved the truth. All of it. Everything. Tuition, housing, books, your living expenses during residency. All of it. Lily's face paled further. But that would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. How could you possibly afford that? I glanced at Vanessa, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. I sold my house, I said quietly. The one your father grew up in. And I came out of retirement. I've been working 3 jobs for most of the past 15 years. 3 jobs? Lily whispered, horrified. At your age? But I thought you were traveling, enjoying retirement. That's what Mom always said when I asked why you couldn't visit. Your grandmother made her choices, Vanessa said defensively. No one forced her to work or to contribute financially. She could have been more present if she'd wanted to be. Something in me snapped. 15 years of swallowed words, of played roles, of silent sacrifice. It all boiled over. That is a lie, Vanessa, and you know it, I said, my voice low but firm. You told me very explicitly that if I wanted to help Lily financially, I would need to stay in the background. You didn't want her to feel obligated to me, remember? You didn't want your new family dynamic complicated by my presence, Vanessa. Flinched as her own words were thrown back at her. I turned back to Lily, whose eyes were filling with tears. Sweetheart, I never wanted you to know any of this. I never wanted you to feel guilty or torn between us. I just wanted to make sure you had every opportunity your father would have wanted for you. By sacrificing your own life? Lily asked, her voice breaking. By letting me believe you didn't care enough to be around? It seemed like the only option at the time, I admitted. Your mother made it clear that those were her terms. Blake, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "Let me get this straight. You sold your home, came out of retirement, and worked multiple jobs well into your 70s to pay for my wife's education, all while agreeing to let someone else take the credit?" When he put it that way, it sounded absurd, even to me. "Yes. And you," he turned to Vanessa, "deliberately kept Lily's grandmother at a distance while accepting her financial support?" Vanessa straightened, her defenses rising. "I did what I thought was best for Lily. Patricia was grieving. She was emotional, sometimes unstable after David died. I needed to provide Lily with stability." "Stop it." Lily's voice cut through the tension. "Just stop." She looked between her mother and me, tears now streaming down her face. "All my life, I thought Grandma Pat didn't want to be around me. I thought she couldn't bear to see me because I reminded her too much of Dad. Do you have any idea how that felt?" The pain in her voice broke my heart. "Lily, I'm so sorry." "No," she shook her head. "I'm not blaming you, Grandma. You were trying to help the only way Mom would let you." She turned to Vanessa. "How could you do this? How could you keep her from me and then make me believe it was her choice?" Vanessa's composure finally cracked. "It wasn't like that, Lily. You don't understand how difficult things were after your father died. The decisions I had to make were selfish," Lily finished. "You deprived me of knowing my grandmother, my father's mother, while letting her sacrifice everything for me." The hospital room fell silent. The truth, 15 years in the making, was finally exposed. I had imagined this moment many times. Over the years, but never like this. With Lily in a hospital bed, pale and vulnerable, having just discovered that her entire understanding of our family dynamic had been built on lies. "I think," Blake said carefully, breaking the tense silence, "that we all need some time to process this. Lily needs rest." He was right, of course. This emotional confrontation was the last thing Lily needed after surgery. But now that the truth was out, there was no putting it back. "I'll come back tomorrow," I said softly, reaching for Lily's hand. "If you want me to." Lily gripped my hand tightly. "I want you to. We have 15 years to catch up on." As I left the room, I heard Vanessa's heels clicking behind me. In the hallway, she caught up. "Patricia," she began, but I held up my hand. "Not now, Vanessa. I've kept your secrets for 15 years. I think I've earned a moment's peace." For once, she had nothing to say. As I walked toward the elevator, I felt lighter somehow, as if the weight of our silent agreement had finally lifted from my shoulders. The truth was out. Messy, painful, complicated, but out. 1 year later, I sat on a bench in Central Park, watching as autumn leaves spiraled down around me. New York City was never a place I'd imagined living, yet here I was, having relocated 6 months ago to an apartment just 10 blocks from Lily and Blake's brownstone. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "We're on our way. Blake's bringing coffee." I smiled, still not quite used to the regular communication, the casual inclusion in their lives. So much had changed since that day in the hospital when 15 years of secrets had unraveled. The days following Lily's surgery had been difficult. Vanessa had attempted damage control, spinning new narratives to justify her actions. But Lily, with her father's quiet strength, had insisted on hearing the full truth. Not just about the financial arrangements, but about every missed birthday, every canceled visit, every carefully crafted lie. Blake had been unexpectedly supportive. As an only child who had lost his own father young, he understood the value of family connections. "My mother would have given anything to have my grandparents involved in my life," he told me during one of our early conversations. "I don't understand how Vanessa could have kept you away." The answers to that question were complex, rooted in grief, control, and Vanessa's determination to recreate her life after David's death. I had come to understand, if not forgive, her motivations. She had wanted to protect Lily, in her own way, and establish herself as the central figure in her daughter's life. "Grandma Pat!" I looked up to see Lily waving as she and Blake approached across the park lawn. She looked radiant, her doctor's coat exchanged for casual weekend clothes, her hair loose around her shoulders. Blake walked beside her, carrying a tray of coffee cups, and between them, taking her first wobbly steps on the grass, was Caroline, my 7-month-old great-granddaughter, named after my mother. "Look who's walking today," Lily said proudly as they reached me. Caroline tumbled onto her bottom, then giggled and reached up for me. I lifted her into my arms, breathing in her sweet baby scent. "Hello, my precious girl," I murmured, kissing her soft cheek. "She's been asking for Gammy all morning," Blake said, handing me a coffee. "Though it sounds more like Gamma right now." The simple fact that Caroline recognized me, that I was a regular presence in her life from her very beginning, still felt like a miracle. "How was the conference?" I asked Lily as we settled on the bench. "Incredible," she answered, her eyes lighting up. The Morrison Foundation scholarship recipients were all there. You should have seen them, Grandma. 11 new doctors, all specializing in underserved communities. Pride swelled in my chest. The Morrison Foundation, Lily and Blake's creation, born from the revelation of my sacrifices. They had established it 6 months after Lily's surgery, using a substantial portion of Blake's inheritance to create a scholarship fund for medical students committed to working in rural and low-income areas. Blake had insisted on naming it after me. "It's your legacy," he'd said simply. "Your sacrifice should be recognized." The foundation was just one of the changes that had followed the hospital revelation. Within weeks, Lily had begun to distance herself from Vanessa's controlling influence. She'd insisted on weekly dinners with me, hungry to rebuild our relationship. She'd asked endless questions about her father, about my life, about the years we'd lost. Most significantly, she and Blake had asked if I would consider moving closer to them. "We're starting a family," Lily had explained. "I don't want my children growing up without knowing their great-grandmother." The invitation had been everything I'd ever wanted and never dared to hope for. I'd sold my Arizona apartment, packed my few belongings, and moved to New York at 74. Vanessa had not taken the changes well. Her carefully constructed world, where she controlled the narrative, where she was the martyr who had sacrificed everything for her daughter, had collapsed. Initially, she'd tried guilt, then anger, then tearful apologies. When none of these worked, she'd retreated to Connecticut, communicating with Lily only through strained monthly phone calls. "Mom called yesterday," Lily said now, as if reading my thoughts. "She's dating someone new, a retired professor." "That's good," I said sincerely. Despite everything, I didn't wish Vanessa ill. She had loved David once, had given me Lily. That counted for something. Caroline squirmed in my lap, reaching for a bright leaf that had fallen on my knee. Her tiny fingers grasped it, examining it with serious concentration. "The foundation board wants you to speak at the spring gala," Blake mentioned. "They want to honor your contribution." I shook my head. "I'm not good at public speaking. Besides, it's your foundation now." "Inspired by you," Lily insisted gently. "Those students should know the story behind their scholarships, how one person's sacrifice can change so many lives." I looked at my granddaughter, successful, compassionate, so like her father, and at the baby in my lap, the future I'd never imagined I'd live to see. "I never saw it as sacrifice," I said quietly. "Not really. Everything I did was because I loved you, Lily. Because you were worth it." Lily's eyes glistened. "I know that now, but for so long I didn't. For so long I was told a different story." "The past is past," I said, reaching for her hand. "What matters is now, this moment." Caroline chose that instant to drop her leaf and lunge for Blake's coffee cup, nearly toppling from my lap in the process. We all laughed as Blake rescued both the coffee and the baby. Later, as we walked through the park together, Blake pushing Caroline's stroller, Lily's arm linked through mine, I thought about the journey that had brought us here, about the label that had once cut me so deeply, the absent grandma. It no longer mattered what they had called me at Lily's wedding. It no longer mattered what story Vanessa had told. What mattered was this. My granddaughter knew the truth. My great-granddaughter would grow up knowing me. My son's legacy lived on, not just in Lily, but in the doctors being trained through the foundation bearing our family name. Some sacrifices go unnoticed. Some are misunderstood or deliberately hidden. But true love, the kind that gives without expectation, that persists through rejection and absence, eventually finds its way to the surface. As we reached the park exit, Lily squeezed my arm gently. "Dinner at our place tonight?" "I wouldn't miss it," I replied. And for the first time in decades, those words held no pain, no hidden meaning, just the simple joy of family, finally found. The absent grandma. They had been right about the absence, but wrong about everything else. And now, in the autumn of my life, surrounded by the family I had never stopped loving, I was finally, truly present.